All right. Hello, lovely. And so this is another video that is going to be kind of a shorter explanation video, and we're going to go over positioning, but not like positioning as in this is right, this is wrong. More just what an off angle is, what a main angle is, what a front line, back line, flank angle, all that jazz is, as far as pertains to both maps, but kind of more a generalized theme of something. So let's get into that. Right. So it's my trusty blackboard. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a shape out. And this is a very generalized shape. This does change depending on map geometry and things like that, but you can more easily identify what things are if we draw this out like this. So let me get this down on the screen. I'll be using a lot of fancy different colors just so that I can kind of show you what's going on here. Whoops. Okay. Oh, and then finally, cool. All right, so this is essentially what I'm getting at. As far as everything is concerned, what color should I write in? I'm going to write in green because it's like a really common color to use. So assuming you're blue, or it actually doesn't assume anything, we'll say, okay, this is your front line. Okay, this is your front line. This is where, in all likelihood, your main tank's going to live, probably one of your DPS. Maybe the off tank comes here every now and again as well. This is your front line. It's very aptly named. It's the front line of your protection. It's where your main artificial cover, which is your main tank shield most likely, is going to be. And adversely, this is also the front line of the enemy team. Okay. And you've kind of named it. This is your back line. I'm sure you've guessed this by now. This is your back line. Notice that the back line is much, much larger than the front line. This is on purpose. The reason this is on purpose... back line. Okay. The reason this is on purpose is because essentially what the back line is any area that has line of sight to your front line. So like, imagine you're Ana. Ana's a really good example of this. Ana's like a quintessential backline hero for the game. Any angle where Ana can heal her frontline, a.e. like a Reinhardt, i.e. like a Reinhardt, excuse me, is a pretty good angle. So she could be way, way, way over here. And so she's controlling, she's scouting this side over here, which we'll go over what that is in a minute. But she still has line of sight, it's pretty good. But she's still close enough or at a slight enough angle where she's not going to get like picked. Like if she was way over here, people over here can completely bypass the front line and get to her, right? And that's really the point of these diagonals here, is if you pass these diagonals, you're really not under much cover from your front line. Now, obviously, the closer behind the front line you are, the more cover you have from your front line. But you kind of get the point there. Okay, so that's why the back line's a little bit bigger, is because all it really requires is a line of sight to your front line that isn't immediately punishable by their, back line, front line. It has to be some kind of flanker, off angle, which is where we get to off angles. Okay, you'll see me use this symbol a lot for the word angle, because it's easier for me to draw than writing out the word angle. So off angles, these are all off angles, by the way. For their side, I should say that. For their side, these are all off angles. And off angles are exactly what they sound like. They're angles that are not the front angle, okay? They're angles that are outside of these diagonals, okay? That's what the off angles are. Now, of course, this is arbitrary depending on map geometry. An off angle could be like literally right here, right? Technically speaking. But, we're trying to draw really basic stuff. Now, there's two places that haven't been marked yet. One word it's flank. Right? How do you flank? Well, flanking is, it's not an exact science, and so it's, essentially, flanking is anything on the other side of the line, okay? So if you're on blue team over here, anything past this pink line on the, meaning going over here, is probably a flank. As long as you're not walking, as long as you're not going through the pink middle, it's probably a flank. And vice versa. If you're on the yellow team, anything going the other way, obviously. Now, what's this pink middle? This is death. Unless your entire team is committing to pushing this angle because you want to take the space, this is death. This is where you cannot be. Okay? Now, this is a very basic, brawly kind of setup for positioning and for things like that. So let me give you a kind of a different example. Oops, sorry. Kind of a different example. Okay, let's take a good look, because now it's gone. So let me draw like a map that you guys might recognize, just for an example. So let's say that there is a high ground over here, and then coming all the way around like this. Yes, this is Numbani. This is a high ground. Okay. And then there's an entrance coming this way. And then there's an entrance going down like this. And there's an entrance coming out like this. And then there's a bridge down here. And then all of this is covered. Right? This is essentially first point Numbani. Oh, I should probably actually draw that out, just so that there's not a... There's a very easy choke, right? Terrible drawing, you get the point. Actually, especially terrible drawing, because it doesn't do that. It does that. There we go. All right. So terrible drawing, but you get the point. So the reason I picked Numbani is because this is notoriously a dive map for the first point. So notoriously, you will have a team setting up here with a little bit here. This is generally what you have, okay? Now, positionally, what is your main angle? So dive doesn't function with your dive and poke don't function as obviously as brawl does. Okay, so what's your main angle? So let's say the other team is going to go under. So a lot of teams go main angle here, which is actually usually a really bad idea, by the way. The better ideas are either going under and trying to dive from here, or staging up on the high ground here. Okay, so let's do the stage up on the high ground. So let's say they're here, but we have people over here trying to go this way. Okay, so let's draw a diagram, right? So here's the main angle, or the front line, whatever you want to call it. Here's the main angle, or the front line, whatever you want to call it. Here's the back line. We'll call this a back line. It's not really a back angle. Here's the back line. Okay, actually, let's keep the same terminology. Okay, here's the front line. Here's the back line. Here is the front line, and here's the back. Here's the front line, right? And where's the back angle? Well, depending on who your healers are, your back angle is probably over here. Your back line, excuse me, is probably over here somewhere. Okay. And then, of course, you have this, which is a flank, which is the first time I've actually drawn a flank today. Okay, which is a flank. Okay, so this is essentially the way that it goes, and the way you can kind of draw this out, I'll use green again to kind of draw out the actual angles and everything, is we drew front lines. Here's the backline angle. Obviously, the map ends, so it's like that. There's the backline angle, right? Where you can kind of be. The off angles are actually if we're saying we're pink, by the way. The off angles are basically anything that's like that on that, because there's no this side of the map, right? It's just over here. So this is the off angles over here, and anything that is not off angles. And anything that's not really in this off angle is going to start being a flank, which is why this is kind of the flank, because you're going this way. And even if this is like a soldier over here, that's a flank angle, right? They're shooting literally up the front lines back. Like that's not an off angle, right? So keep that in mind. And same thing with yellow is your backline angles are really just like there is the backline angle. And then your off angles are the same. Actually, it's the same thing as this. It's just from this line to this line instead. And then flanks anything beyond that, right? So you can see how like the angles will change. Now this is all assuming. Let me get rid of all that. This is all assuming that the pink is doing the stage dive on the high ground, and not the underneath dive that is I don't know if I'm going to say more common, but a little bit stronger. So this is your front line. Front line. Your back line's actually right behind it. And then generally speaking, you still are going to have some kind of flank coming in this way. But the question is this actually a flank anymore? So your front line's going to dive this over here. Your back line's going to stay around this area. And your flank, quote unquote, is going to go this way. Now, here's the question. Is that a flank or is that an off angle? Here's where it becomes a little bit like, who knows? Because really, if this is everything happening and this is the strategy, your entire team's kind of flanking. And this is why this strategy is actually a lot stronger than the other one, is because it's almost unscouted. And if you can do it appropriately, your entire team's flanking the back line, and you're forcing the other team, the yellow team, to come in and basically peel their entire team for the back line. And and this is why the peel here needs to not be this way, by the way. The peel here for the back line needs to be this way, because you need to consolidate it together. These arrows need to be pointing in opposite directions so they can get closer together. But also, the back line peeling this way, which is a common error I see in Diamond and lower, but it is because this is unscouted, and this is technically going to be a second flank coming in at this angle, so it's going to be a problem. So like this kind of breakdown for first point Numbani is really what you got to think about when you're thinking about planning. Like if you're on a team, no matter what rank that team is, think about actually how you want to attack standardized points. Payload's a little bit harder because the point's always moving and you could be ending up in different parts of the map. But this is really what I'm talking about with like standardized points, which like a control point, right? The control point is legitimately right here. And we know it's going to be right there. And we know they're either going to set up on this high ground or they're going to set up on this high ground. And this one's significantly stronger, right? And we can kind of make plans for either one too. But this is basically what you have to go over considerably and understand what the point is. Now, some of you say, well, what if we don't want to play dive because we don't like any of those strategies? Well, for you people, I'm going to show you why dive is the better idea. It's because if you play non-dive, if you play the Reinhardt strat, for example, you have three options. You can go high ground here, you can come out here again, or you can basically go up middle. If you go up middle, it should be fairly obvious. You're a shooting gallery. You can't get to them, and they can get to you. This sucks. This high ground over here should be fairly obvious. It's kind of the same, right? You get to the high ground, sure, you might have an Ashe or something, but their whole team is built to dive you onto this high ground and shoot you from range that you can't get to. And they might not even need to dive you if you're playing like Reaper Sombra, because they can just shoot you. There's not really a problem. So this sucks too. So you get to point. Now here's the only one that's really viable playing Orion comp. You go underneath and get to point. Now why is this one more viable? They still have distance on you, coach. Yeah, I understand that, but you have point control. So here's the difference here. They have to respond. This is a forced response. That you are on point. They have to respond by getting on point, or they're going to give you a free cap. Okay. Now, do they have to respond immediately? No, they have like 3-4 seconds before you get a tick. But they have to respond fast enough where you're at least forcing them to come down to your level. Now, not all of them, but some of them. So if you're going to do the Ryan strat, you almost certainly have to go underneath, because it's the only thing that doesn't give you a surefire disadvantage. But also, you probably still have to send someone on this flank, and you probably still need someone up on a high ground somewhere shooting this backline angle so that it's pressured in some capacity as this flank is coming through. You still need something going on where you still push them off this high ground or kill them off the high ground in some capacity. It's just this is the only way your front line is going to survive or do anything impactful, because it's going to force their front line to rotate to point, and you actually get something done there. That's the only way you get anything done. Okay, so I didn't mean for this to be a tutorial on how to play first point Numbani, but this is kind of how you play first point Numbani. But this is also how you break down your front line, your back line, whether you're on off angle while you're trying to flank. Now, coach, Why does it matter if I'm on an off angle versus a flank versus a main angle versus a back line versus a front line versus death? Good question. Different heroes are built for different things. Okay, so let's take DPS, because tanks you can kind of pretty much every main tank is built for a front line, right? And every off tank is built either to support that front line, peel for the back line, or help with an off angle. It kind of just depends on the positioning of everything and how things are going. Main healers are usually going to be in the backline. Baptiste, Ana, even Zenyatta, right? Going to be the backline. A few of them are going to be in the front line. Moira, Brigitte, I'm forgetting one. Moira, Brigitte. Oh, Moira and Brigitte. Okay. So the two that have kind of a very variable positioning is Mercy and Lucio. And Mercy's going to be on off angles more than likely because she's best at pocketing off angle heroes. Ashe, Widowmaker, stuff like that. But Lucio positioning is actually a lot like an off tank in the fact that he can help your frontline push, he can peel for your backline, or he can go help, or even just be an off angle in and of himself. So Lucio is the most complicated support hero as far as positioning is concerned because he can do all three things fairly well. Disregarding that though, your DPS is where really you have to know is the DPS that have low movement and high survivability. High survive. This is generally your front line and back line, right? They don't want to be on an off angle or flank angle. They can't move, right? But they can survive despite being on an angle that's probably being shot at a lot, right? High survivability. I'm sorry, high movement, excuse me. High movement. Low survivability. Which these are counterproductive statements, by the way. And you know what? I'll state these differently because those are counterproductive statements, okay? So, low movement. Really what it is, low movement, high movement. So if you have high movement, you have a certain amount of survivability. That's why I said they're countering statements, actually. So low movement, high movement, and then high movement. Or, movement's not really a factor here. So, low movement, range is the other one. So low movement, high range. High movement, low range. And then kind of the in-between, so middle and middle, right? So low movement, high range is generally going to be your back line, and then you can take slight off angles, right? So this includes like Hanzo, Ashe, like they have movement abilities, but it's really low movement, right? High movement, Tracer, right? Genji, Doomfist, Sombra to a certain extent, things like this. This is generally going to be your flanky heroes. They also usually off angle as well, things like that. Okay, and then the medium, this is generally where you're going to get people that have like Soldier falls in this. This is where people are going to be like, this is kind of frontliney, but at the same time, this is going to be like a little bit of an off angle-y. And generally, someone falls in all of these categories. So like low movement, high range, backline / off angles. This can be frontline-ish as well, like closer to the frontline backline angles, things like that. Like I said, it's fairly complicated. So as a DPS, you kind of have to know where you fall in these, so you know where to position in these. And I think that's the most important thing, because you have to be in an effective range, but you have to be, and this is really the point of all of this, is you have to be at an effective range, but you have to be at an effective range that allows you to survive. So the effective range of Tracer is not that far. But if you're just sitting in the front line as Tracer, that's probably not the best survivability tactic for you, as that's a lot of spam damage and you only have 150 health. Torbjorn is another really good one. He has some pretty decent range, and he has high survivability, no movement, but high survivability for like 5 seconds. So he can survive in your back line and then go up into your front line or go up onto an off angle with his E ability, with his overclock ability, and survive there for a little bit, and then back up into the off angle and have his range again. So really think about what your hero does. And that's going to tell you where you really should be, right? What is he? Is he high mobility? Does he have a get out of jail free card? A get out of jail free card is any ability that makes you temporarily really impossible to kill, or it gets you out of like really sticky situations by just a press of a button. That's a get out of jail free card. Moira Fade, Reaper Fade, Recall, Tracer Recall, Sombra, Translocator. There's way more than that. I don't know why I'm blanking, but you get the point. So that's like a basic of all positioning and like how to position certain heroes. So a lot of mistakes that I see is just playing the hero wrong, especially on damage, but even on other things. But a lot of what I see is playing the hero wrong. I see, soldier players just sitting behind their main tank spraying the enemy shield. That's not the most effective way to use soldier. I see McCree on these crazy like super wide off angle flanks. You're probably going to die. You don't have a get out of jail free card. You don't have a lot of maneuverability. You have a stun, and you can maybe able to kill them with that stun, but that's the best you got. So anyway, I hope that's helpful to you guys in your play. If you want to see more videos like this, like, comment, subscribe. And actually, in the comments, I'd like to see what you think certain heroes are. So like when you play, I want to see like if you have a main, tell me what position you think the main should be in. And we should go from there. All right. Thanks, guys, and have a really great day.